Welcome back to part 3 of our series where we are talking about the Power BI REST API. And more specifically, we are talking about, at least in today's video, we're going to spend some time talking about the different Power BI licenses and how that will impact what you're able to do with the REST API. Additionally, we will talk about some further authentication steps that you're probably going to have to go through if you are planning to use a Power BI premium license. And additionally, I think we might start talking a little bit about report services and some of the limitations that come along with that, depending on what type of license you have, because that is something I do want to briefly talk on, but if I wait till the next video, that's fine with me too. Okay, so in our previous video, we talked about using the Use Dashboard service, and then in the first video, we registered an app that has the capability to interact with the Power BI REST API. Now, a couple things that we need to discuss a little bit more in more detail is when we're talking about different types of workspaces. So not all workspaces are the same from Power BI's perspective. To give you an idea of that, I'm going to go to my Power BI web application. And this is normally, if you click the home page, for example, this is when you'll see it like this. But from the left-hand side, you're going to see some different options here. So you can create new data sets, you can create new reports, dashboards, you can look at existing ones. But the important part that we're going to talk about is the workspace section. So this is that little section down here. The one that you see at the bottom is the one that you're currently selected. And then this is a full list of the different types of workspaces that you have created. Now to go back to our original topic, not all workspaces are the same. Some workspaces are what we call premium workspaces. And that means you get things like dedicated capacity. So I think there's like an Azure storage account that is assigned behind the scenes to you. Additionally, you get access to some auto scale functionality if you're paying the per capacity licensing structure. And then from the REST API perspective, there's certain endpoints that are available to you if you have a premium account access. So there's a lot to it, obviously. In this situation, if you do have one license versus the other one, it's not to say that the amount of functionality diminishes dramatically, but I would say with a regular account, you probably have access to like 85% of the endpoints. The rest of that 15% is if you have a license account. And then more specifically, you have to have a certain type of premium license account to get full access to that remaining 15%. Now, the way that you can tell you have a premium one is pretty straightforward. If you notice a little diamond right next to it and you hover over it, you will see that this one is a Power BI premium per user content license. Now, if you want just a little bit of a pricing overview about how these are structured, if you have a regular Power BI Pro license account, that is $9.99 per user per month. So I had this one. But I've also, because I wanted to work on the API library, I also got a Power BI Premium per user account. So this one is $20 per user per month. And then finally, there is what we call a per capacity one. This is the most expensive one. This one is about $5,000 a month. I don't know why they do $4,995 a month. I know it's a pricing scheme, but it's $5,000 a month. This is really designed for enterprises and large organizations that might have multiple users. So this one, you get access to a lot of different stuff, like, like I said, auto scaling, some other services working with like big data and stuff like that. And that one you can't even buy online. You have to like specifically contact them. There's also a preview one that if you go down, there's auto scale preview. So this is like an add-on where I think, so this one is you have to have a per capacity one. So this is like another add-on that they have. So this is per vCore 24 hours. I don't know. And you can see the differences here if you wanted to. But you can also see here that some features are only available in certain premium licenses. So here we go. a paginated report, that one, if you want to access it through the REST API, clearly you would have to have a premium license in order to do that. You can also see a lot of it too with model size, like just data storage and stuff like that. And then, also you get some advanced AI stuff and stuff like that. And then they have XMLA endpoints for read and write connectivity. So this is actually going to go back a little bit to what we're going to talk about in a second. But if you basically want to automate your premium workspaces, this is where we have to go a little bit further when it comes to our authentication process. So it's kind of one of those things too, where people will kind of say, well, Alex, like, what does this specifically impact? To be completely honest, I don't know exactly what premium workspace services you can use without doing this step. So because of that, I have just said I do it because I want to be able to access the premium workspace services. So this is what I've been doing in order to get through some like headaches that came along with it. But anywho, let me get to that little article because it's really important. But basically, if you can go find this little article that is down under Power BI Premium and under how to and everything like that, so admin and enterprise, they talk about automation with service principles. And so basically what they're talking about is, hey, if you have an Azure Active Directory app, if you want it to interact with a premium workspace and dataset task with service principles, then there's some other stuff that you need to go through. And so we've done part of it, which is create that service principle, which was basically create your app registration. But then there's another couple steps that you need to go through. Now, one of them, I believe, is actually done when you go through the app registration process, which is creating an AD security group. Technically speaking, you don't need this, but it's also one of those things when you're assigning permissions to certain resources, you want to try to be as granular as possible. So if I'm making it where, for example, I want my app to have access to Power BI, really what I want to say is, hey, I want this one specific app or this group of apps to have access to it, but I don't want necessarily all my other resources to have access to it. And so what they recommend is you create an Azure AD security group. Now, some people might ask, well, how do I do this? Don't worry, I'll show you. So, if you go to your Azure Active Directory, you go to groups, you will see your different groups. These are the different security groups and Microsoft 365 groups. You can create a new group if you want to, but you probably shouldn't have to if you have the, when you did your app registration. But basically you would do group security, and then I could do something like, oh, Power BI REST API security, right? And then I could give it, yeah. And then I can also add members. So I can say Power BI Python API client. I can select it. And then I can also give it an owner as well. I think it only needs to have an owner, but I'll just create it. And then if I have to, I can always go back and change it. But then you can see it here. You're like, great, that's awesome. I have one here. Okay, so maybe it was owner that I was supposed to do. Let me see. Oh no, I guess that's a member. So I didn't technically do it. I would probably have an owner, and I would probably have it either be the admin or something like that. But regardless, so that would be like creating your group, right? So you create security group. That's all said and done. What's the next thing? So now you have to enable service principles for Power BI. And so again, this is allowing it where we're giving access to service principles to use the Power BI API from within our workspaces. So this is another setting that we have to turn on. That's pretty easy to get to. I'm going to close out of that. If you go to these three little dots, you go down to settings, and then you go to admin portal. You want to stay on the first section, which is tenant settings. You have to scroll down a little bit. It's kind of closer towards the bottom, but there should be a section for developer settings. If you expand allow service principles to use Power BI APIs, right now I have it enabled. More than likely, you're going to have it be disabled. You want to turn it to enable. And then you want to say, well, who does this apply to? What are the service principles that I'm allowing to have access to? In this situation, we're going to specify a specific security group. what that will do is it will say, hey, any of the service principals that fall in that security group can access the Power BI API. So I'm using the one that I already had set, but if I wanted to, I could do the other one that is currently not part of here if I wanted to, but I don't need to. I already have one that is set up for me. But that's basically what you would do. You would say apply. Keep in mind, it does take a little bit of time in order for it to go through. So don't feel like it's going to happen immediately. I mean, most time it happened immediately, so I don't like really say anything about that, but I know in some situations it depends clearly. Okay, so let us, oh, that's the other library. I'll talk about that in a different video. Okay, so that is, I think, everything we're going to cover in this video. So that's at least going to hopefully clear up any authentication issues you might be having. Some of those authentication issues, I'm sure some of them might be happening on a regular Power BI Pro license. If you're running into issues, try going through that process, see what happens. It should take care of it for you. But if you do have any questions, feel free to put those down in the comments below, and then I will do my best to answer them. Otherwise, we will see you in the next video.